Welcome. In the last lecture, we successfully created the standalone effect. Now, before we move on, there are two issues that I'd like to fix. First, in the last lecture, I set the blend mode of this material to be translucent, and I forgot to say back. Now I'm going to say back to be additive and press apply. And the second one is additive to be translucent. And I forgot to say back. Now I'm going to say back to be additive and press apply. And the second one is, for this effect, if you look closely at the standalone, you can see as they're floating in the air, their facing direction is always the same, and that's not really ideal for an effect like this. And we can easily change that by adding a new module to particle update. So I'm going to select this Niagara system, right mouse button click, and click browse to asset, and press G to hide it, and double click to open my NS underscore dandelion. So under this particle update, there's another module just for the rotation. So the module is called sprite rotation rate, and you can see it's right there. So if you are ever confused about what a module can do, you can use your mouse hover over it, and usually this can tell you what you'll do. So you can see here it says rotate a sprite over time, input is in degrees. So this rotation rate here, the module will take it as degrees, and all we need to do is change the numbers in here. So I'm going to use a random range float, and the degrees that I'm going for will be somewhere between 90 degrees and 240. Now, if I go back to my level, you can see all my dandelions, they begin to rotate. And if you think the rotating is too much, you can always decrease the number. But I think I'm pretty happy with what I have here. And now you already know that by applying some custom materials, we can achieve many different types of effect. And with some special textures, there is so much more that we can do. And that includes sub-UV animation. So sub-UV animation is also known as a flipbook effect, and it's very powerful when we need to simulate fire or smoke. And in order to set this up, there are a few things that we need. So first, we need a flipbook texture. After having this texture, we'll need to create a custom material based on it. After that, we need to assign this material to our Niagara emitter. Then we need to change its sub-UV image size in there. And finally, we need to define its animation start and end frame. So let's go over this step by step. So for the flipbook texture, inside of the pack that we imported, there are already a lot of flipbook textures. So you can see there are textures for explosion and textures for fire. And I believe there are also some textures for smoke. And we can create some pretty decent fires or smoke from these textures. But there's another pack that I like to import. And in there, we can find more textures with higher quality. So the pack is called this M5 VFX Volume 2 Fire and Flame. And it's another free pack. And it already supports 5.1. All we need to do is add it to our project. So I'm going to add it to my project. Alright, after getting hold of it, same as our last pack, I'm gonna copy out the textures folder. So I'm gonna select this textures folder and move it to my textures folder and select copy here. And I'm gonna rename this to fire_VFX textures. And go to file and click save all. Alright, next thing that I want to do, I'm gonna delete this pack from my project. And there's a faster way to do it. So you can right mouse button click and go to where this pack is located on your disk. And you can delete this folder directly from your disk. But only do this when you are sure that no other assets in your project are referencing anything inside of it. So I'm going to first close my project. Then I'm going to delete this folder directly from my disk. And I'm going to restart my project. Alright, now that we have the texture ready, the next thing, we need a material. So go back to my material folder. And here I'm going to create another material. So I'm going to call this M_sub-UV master_additive. So in the future, if there are other VFX that need to use flipbook texture, I'm going to create material instance from this material. Double click to open it. So first, I'm going to change this blend mode from opaque to additive and change this from default lit to unlit. And right mouse button click, bring in the particle color first. And next thing, I'm going to bring in a texture. So the texture I'm going for is inside of this fire loop. So there are a lot of fires in here, and I'm going to go with this big fire too. So select it and bring it in my material editor and combine these two nodes together. So hold down M on my keyboard, connect their RGB, and press Ctrl+D, duplicate it, connect their alpha. And plug it into opacity, plug this into emissive color. And I'm going to convert this texture sample into parameter. I'm going to call this main texture and click apply and go back to my content browser. Now I'm going to create a material instance from it. So click create material instance. I'm going to call this mi_bigfire_additive and move this material instance to my Niagara folder. I'm going to create another folder in here. I'm going to call this 07 sub UV animation and bring in that material instance. Alright, inside of this folder, I'm going to create a Niagara system and click next. This time, I'm going to start with this simple sprite burst again. Instance to this material slot, open it. So first things first, I'm going to assign that material instance to this material slot. So I'm going to select it and click this button. In here. And after that, you can see we have some fires in here. But right now, it is being displayed as a texture, and that's the last two steps that we need to do. So we need to set its sub-UV image size and its animation start and end frame. So to set its sub-UV image size, you can find it under this sprite renderer and go to the section where it says sub-UV. You can see in here, we can set its sub-UV image size. And the two values here, we need to set them based on the number of elements inside of this texture. So if you go back to your material instance, you can see this is an 8x8 texture, and we need to set the numbers there accordingly. So go back to my Niagara system. I'm going to change this value from 1 to 8 and change this from 1 to 8. And now you can see we only have one fire. And so far, this is only a still texture. In order to make it move, there's one module that we need to add under this particle update, and that is called sub-UV animation. And you can see right after we add this module, we get some warning message. So in here, it says no sprite renderer selected. Inside of this dropdown, we can select this sprite renderer. So this is the sprite renderer that we've been using, and now you can see we have fire. And if you are not happy with this play rate, you can manually override that in here. So by default, it will start at 0 frame and it will end at this, and it will end at the last frame. So this is an 8x8 texture, so meaning we have 64 frames. If we want this to play faster, you can change this number from 63 to maybe 128, and now you can see it plays much faster. I'm gonna say back to 64 or 63 maybe, and all it's left there to do is we need to manually tweak some of the values in here in order for this to look right. But before we do that, it's time for a challenge. So a challenge is, I'd like you to import the fully built textures from this M5 VFX pack. After that, I'd like you to create a custom material and assign the custom material to our sprite renderer. And don't forget to set up the sub-UV image size and the sub-UV animation. Pause the video now and give this a go. It's in here. So now that we have our basic file ready, we need to begin to tweak the values in here. So first, I'm going to go inside of this emitter state, and I'm going to change the loop behavior from 1 to infinite. And I'm going to delete this spawn burst instantaneous. Instead, I'm going to use spawn rate. And I'm just going to give it a hard-coded value of 50 in here. Now you can see I have a lot more fires. And inside of this initialized particle, so for its lifetime, I want to provide some randomness. So I'm going to select this random range float. And the minimum lifetime, I'm going to say to be 0.5. And the maximum, I'm going to say to be 1.8. Feel free to apply your own values in here. And for the sprite size, I'm going to use random uniform. And for the minimum scale, I'm going to say it to be 80. For the maximum scale, I'm going to say it to be 130. All right. Now all the fires, they are being spawned at the exact same location. So I'm going to separate them, use the module shape location. And right now, I think the radius of this sphere is too large, so I'm gonna set it using a random range float. And the value I'm going for is somewhere between 5 and 10. Alright, we are getting somewhere. And in order for them to look more realistic, I'm going to use the module at velocity. And now you can see some of the particles, some of the fires are being pushed up. Instead of using the linear velocity mode, I'm going to change it to in cone. So now we'll be applying our velocity in a cone shape, and we can define its cone axis in here. So instead of having a value of 1 in x-axis, I'm going to set it to have a value of 1 in the z-axis. Now the fires will be pushed up, and we can set the cone angle in here. So I'm going to change the cone angle from a static value to a random value. And the minimum value, I'm going to try 15, and the maximum value, I'm going to try 30. All right, something like this. And I'm going to increase the velocity speed in here. So I'm going to use another random range float. So the minimum speed, I'm going to say to be 80, and the maximum speed, I'm going to say to be 90. Now you can see we are already having a better result. All right. Those are the things that I want to set under this stage. And now let's move on to particle update. So first, I'm going to add the module scale sprite size. So generally, the fires below will be smaller and the fires above will be bigger. And the perfect curve for that will be this curve. So it's called ease in. I'm going to use this curve. All right, something like this. And the last thing that I want to set will be its color. So right now, it's not bright enough. And instead of using this scale color module, I'm going to delete it and I'm going to use the color module. So I want to change its color during its lifetime. So I'm going to change this from a static value to this color from curve. So the things that I'm going for is I want the bottom part to be brighter and the upper part to be darker. And to do that, we can manually set the colors in here. So I'm going to say it to be something maybe orangish, somewhere near here. And I'm going to increase this value from 1 to 3. All right, I'm I'm going to increase this value from 1 to 3. Alright, I'm going to drag out this pin a little bit, somewhere near here. Alright, in the middle, I'm going to add another pin. So for this pin, I'm going to lower its value a little bit. Alright, something like this. And click OK. Alright, something like this. And click OK. Let's see what this looks like in our level. So go back to my level. I'm going to drag out a new demo display. And I'm going to change the name from Dandelion to sub-UV animation. And I'm going to duplicate this mannequin as well. And place my Niagara system inside of my level. And there you go, we have our fire. And if we want it to look better, we can keep tweaking all of the values here. For example, the speed of the velocity module and the different colors for the color module. And also, in order for this fire to work, it still misses some of the key elements. So normally when there's a fire, there's smoke and possibly some embers. And we're going to be doing all of that in the next lecture. So these are the modules that I used to create my own fire, and you can take a reference of this and create your own variation of it. So Maybe you don't like the sphere shape location, feel free to use a different shape, and feel free to choose your own color, and have fun with adjusting all of those values. And in the next lecture, we'll look at how we can create a much better file. I'll see you in the next lecture. Welcome! Starting from this lecture, we'll look at how we can create a flamethrower like this. So before we jump in our editor and create the Niagara system we need, let's analyze this VFX a little bit. So in the future, very likely, you'll want to create some of your own VFX, and it can be from an existing VFX that you see or a type of VFX that you really like. But no matter what you are trying to create, it's very important for you to know what you might need during your creation. And I think it all goes down to this one single question: what do you see? For creating a VFX, same as creating a scene or creating a model, we'll need some reference, and by looking at that reference, there are 3 questions that you can think about. So first one, what renderers do you see? So far, we've only used the sprite renderer, and to create this effect, to create this flamethrower, sprite renderer is enough. But later, when we introduce more renderers, those will be something that can be used in a VFX as well. And oftentimes, for creating a VFX, we'll need multiple renderers to work together. And the second question is, what elements do you see? So in this step, we need to quickly identify the elements we need for creating this VFX. It can be the type of textures we need or the type of mesh we need. You know what I'm talking about when we go over mesh renderer later. And after gathering enough information, the final question is, what forces or material do you see? So you already know that the importance of a material in the VFX. And generally, to create a VFX, but only having the material is not enough. In order to simulate the movement that you want, it'll be great for you to know what forces modules you might need. Right now, I'm not going to give you answers to all of these 3 questions for this VFX, but I'm going to ask these 3 questions again when we finish this VFX, and by that time, you'll have a pretty good idea about the answers. So go back to my editor. I'm going to first duplicate this demo display along with this mannequin, and I'm going to change the name to flamethrower. And after that, I'm going to create a Niagara system inside of this sub-UV animation folder. Same as the one before, I'm going to use the simple sprite burst and connect finish. So this one, I'm going to call it ns_flamethrower. And double click to open it. So for this Niagara system, we'll need multiple emitters to work together. And I'm going to name this emitter. So we can press F2 to do that. I'm going to change it to main flame. And after that, so we can press F2 to do that, I'm going to change it to main flame. And after that, I'm going to change the material for this sprite renderer. So click this drop down. I'm going to type mi_bigfire. And select it. So that's up my material for this sprite fire. And select it. So the sub image size will be 8 by 8. And in order for the different frames to blend better, I'm going to also take this sub-UV blending enabled. Alright, next thing, I'm going to add the sub-UV animation module and select the sprite renderer. In here. For the start frame, I'm going to give it a random value. So instead of a hard-coded value of 0, I'm going to make it to start between 0 frame and the 5th frame. And for the end frame, I'm going to increase its play rate to 128. Alright, that's the basic setup for the main flame. And I'm going to start from the top to the bottom. So first is the properties. So instead of CPU sim, I'm going to change it to GPU compute sim and change this to fixed bounds. And for this emitter state, I'm going to change it to loop infinitely and delete this bump burst instantaneous to loop. And for this emitter state, I'm going to change it to loop infinitely and delete this bump burst instantaneous. Use spawn rate instead. So for the spawn rate, I'm going to give it a random value. And the value I'm going for will be somewhere between 300 and 500. Alright? And inside of this initialized particle module, for its lifetime, since this will be the main flame for the flamethrower, and usually those flames shouldn't live too long. So I'm going to give it a random range float, and the value will be between 0.5 and 0.8. Feel free to choose your own values in here. And same as the last fire that we created, I'm going to first use the module shape location. The last fire that we created, I'm going to first use the module shape location. And decrease the sphere radius to 10. And the defining force for this type of VFX would be the module at velocity. So I want the flame to move forward, and we can use the same velocity mode as last lecture. It'll be in cone. And we can define the cone axis in here. So having the cone pointing to x-axis is exactly what we want in here. But for the cone angle, I'm going to lower it down to a number of 5. And this inner cone angle, I'm going to give it a number of 3. Alright, time for this velocity. So I'm going to give it a random range float, and the value I'm going to say to be somewhere between 500 and 800. Now you can see we have the basic of our flamethrower. So I'm going to hold down my middle mouse button to pan my preview window. So you can see all of those particles of these sprites of this fire, they all have the same facing direction, and that isn't really too ideal. We can randomize that by going back to initialize particle, and inside of this sprite rotation mode, I'm going to change it to random. And now you can see this looks much better. And moving on to particle update. So I'm going to first bring out that scale sprite size. And use the same curve that we used in the last lecture. Pretty cool, we're already getting somewhere. And currently, I think the size of my sprite, they look way too uniform, and I'm going to go back to this initialized particle, and I'm going to provide some randomness in here. So I'm going to use this random range float, and the value I'm going for will be somewhere between 50 and 80. Alright, something like this. And next thing that I want to set will be its color. So I'm going to delete this scale color module. And I'm going to use the color module instead. So use color from curve. And the first pin, I'm going to set its color to be somewhere reddish or orangish, and increase its value from 1 to 3. We can always come back to change this later, and drag out this pin a little bit, and left mouse button click to add another pin in the middle. So for this one, I'm going to lower its value down to 1. Alright, that's it. Now with this one, I'm going to lower its value down to 1. Alright, that's it. Now let's see what this looks like in our level. So go back to my level. So I'm going to bring out this MS flamethrower and drag it up a little bit. And that's it. We have our main flame ready. So comparing to the fire that we created in the last lecture, we are using the same exact material, except we only changed some of the values for the forces. And here's what we can get. Looks pretty cool. I think I'm gonna tweak the color of this main flame a little bit. So go back to my Niagara system. I'm gonna move the color to somewhere near here and go back to my level. Alright, something like this. And I'm somewhere near here and go back to my level. The color to somewhere near here and go back to my level. Alright, Try something like this, and I'm going to move this mannequin to the side. Later, when you try to create this by yourself, you can use side to, and I'm going to move this mannequin to the side. Later, when you try to, I'm going to move here, and I'm back to my level. Move the color. Alright, something like somewhere near here. I'm going to move the color to somewhere. Near here, and go to the side. Later, when modules that are used, and they are pretty similar in cone, and the scale of the speed inside will be pretty straightforward. Welcome. In the last lecture, we created created this main flame for our flamethrower, and in this lecture, let's look at how we can smoke for it. So same as our fire, to create smoke, we'll need to use some flickbook textures. And from the pack that we imported, there are already a lot of smoke textures inside of it. So first things first, I'm going to create a material for it. Go back to my material folder. I'm going to duplicate this master material. And instead of this suffix additive, I'm going to change it to trans. So short for translucent. And double click to open it. Instead of additive here, I'm going to change it to translucent, since I know for my smoke, I like to apply some dark colors on it. And note that here I didn't take this two-sided option, and that's because I know this material will only be used by sprite renderer, so there's really no reason for me to take this. Alright, I'm going to click apply and close this window and create a material instance. From it, I'm going to call this mi underscore flamethrower smoke underscore trans and move this material instance to my sub-UV animation folder. And I'm going to change the texture. So double click to open it. So the texture I like to use will be from this file VFX textures and under this smoke folder. There are a lot of textures we can choose. So the texture that I'm going for will be this texture. So this one underscore 6 smoke 2. And click this icon in here. Alright, I'm going to go back to my Niagara system. So right mouse button click and click Browse to Asset and double click to open it. So for the second emitter, since the movement of it will be very similar as this one, I'm going to directly duplicate this main flame and swap out its material. So I'm going to select it and press Ctrl+D to duplicate this emitter. And right away, I'm going to change its name to be Smoke. And I'm going to press this this icon to solo this emitter. So first things first, I'm going to swap out the material. So click this sprite renderer and select this material and click this icon to swap it out. And now you can see we are getting some smoke, but it's using the color of fire. So I'm going to delete this color module first. And now this is its original color. So I'm going to delete this material and click this icon renderer name to Ctrl+D to duplicate this emitter. And right away, I'm going to change its name to be smoke. And I'm going to press this icon to solo this emitter. So first things first, I'm going to swap out the material. So click this sprite renderer and select this material and click this icon to swap it out. And now you can see we are getting some smoke, but it's using the color of fire. So I'm going to delete this color module first. And now this is its original color. I'm going to delete this color module first. And now this is its original color. So I'm going to start to take some of its values. For the spawn rate, I don't need this many. So I'm going to press this icon to reset it to default value. And I'm going to just give it a value of 100. All right, something like this. And for this initialize particle, I'm not going to touch its lifetime, but I'm going to set its initial color. So instead of pure white, I'm going to lower its value down to be something like this. And you can see we have some black smoke. All right, let's see how it blends with the other flame. So I'm going to click this icon again to show all the available emitters. This is what we have so far. So right now, the fire is being spawned at the exact same location as the flame. But I want the spawn now to be something like this. And you can see this initial 100 default value. So I'm going to start to take some of this icon to reset it, touch its lifetime, but I'm going to set. And for this initialize particle, I'm not going to touch its lifetime, but I'm going to set its initial color. So instead of how it blends with the emitters. This is what we have so far. So right now, location to be moved to the tip of this flamethrower. And to do that, we can set its position offset in here. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to offset the smoke along the x-axis. So I'm going to first give it a value of 120 units. All right, something like this. And I'm not going to touch this scale sprite size. All right, something like this. And I'm not going to touch this scale sprite size. And I'm not going to touch this UV animation. You can do that if you want. I'm going to add one final module, and that'll be this scale color. So I like to fade out this smoke. And for this scale alpha, I'm going to click this icon in here and select flow from curve. And I'm going to use this curve. So now my smoke will slowly fade out. And go back to my level. Right now, I can barely see the smoke, so I'm going to adjust the scale color curve a little bit. So go back to this flamethrower. So I'm going to select the start time of this fading. Now, instead of 0 seconds, I'm going to set it to be 0.5. So that I'll have more black smoke before they fade out. And go back to 0.5. So that I'll have more black smoke before they fade out. And go back to my level. Yeah, something like this. I think I'm also want to increase its spawn rate a little bit. So go back to this spawn rate. I'm going to give it a default value of 150. All right, something like this. And go back to my level. And just like that, we now have the smoke. And just by swapping out the texture from a flame texture to a smoke texture, this is what we can get. Later, when you try to create your own smoke, you can use this as a reference. So the key factors here are real there as out. You can always smoke out. Welcome. In the last lecture, we created this black smoke for our flame. flamethrower, and in this lecture, let's look at how we can create the blue flame at the bottom and some embers. So go back to my Niagara system. For the blue flame, it's fairly simple. We can just duplicate this main flame. So I'm going to move these two emitters out a little bit, and I'm going to select this main flame, press Ctrl+D to duplicate it, and I'm going to isolate it. First. So the first thing that I'm going to adjust is its spawn rate. I don't need this many, so I'm going to reset it to default, and instead I'm going to use a value to be between 100 and 130, all right? Something like that. And under this initialize particle section, I'm going to decrease its size as well. So it's going to be 10 and 20, all right? Something like that. And for the blue flame, it usually doesn't go that far, so I'm going to decrease its velocity speed as well. So I'm going to reset this value, and I think the default value is good enough. So I'm going to pan my viewport a little bit. All right, something like this. And I'm going to also decrease this shape location. So instead of 10 for sphere radius, I'm going to decrease it to 2. And the last thing that I want to adjust for your radius, I'm going to also decrease this shape location. So instead of 10 for sphere radius, I'm going to decrease it to 2. And the last thing that I want to adjust would be its color. So right now it's using the color from the main flame, but I'm going to change it to something bluish. So I'm going to move the color to somewhere near here. And I'm going to select this pane. I'm going to move the color to somewhere near here. And I'm going to select this pane and delete it. So it's still using some of the flame color. Select this pane and delete. Move the color to somewhere near here. And I'm going to select this pane and delete it. So it's still using some of the flame color. I think I'll just delete this module and start all over. Still using some of the flame color. I think I'll just delete this module, and it's still using some of the flame color. I think I'll just delete this module and start all over again. So I'm going to type to something bluish. So I'm going to move the color to somewhere near here. And I'm going to select this pane and delete it. So it's still using some of the flame color. I think I'll just delete this module and start all over again. So I'm going to type color and select color from curve. And I'm going to change this to something bluish and increase the value of it to somewhere near 5. And I'm going to move this pin out. And in here, I don't want its opacity to fade so quickly. So I'm going to add another pin in here. Now I'll have more blue frame. And for its end color, I'm going to say it to be something blue. Now I'll have opacity to fade so quickly. So I'm going to add another pin in here. Now I'll have more blue frame. And for its end color, I'm going to say it to be something bluish as well. And increase its value to maybe 2. I'm going to show other emitters to see what this looks like. So right now, that's blue flame is too close to the origin of this main flame, and I'm gonna offset it a little bit. So go back to my initialized particle and take this position offset. Give it a default value of -10. In the x-axis. Alright, something like that. And I think I will increase the speed scale for this velocity module. So instead of a 25, maybe I'll give a value of 50 and go back to my level. So this is what I have so far. I think I'm going to increase the brightness of the blue flame a little bit. So go back to my Niagara system and go back to the color. So I'm going to increase its value from 5 to 10. And click OK. Go back to my level. Yeah, something like that. This looks much better. And there you go. We have our blue flame ready. And it's time for a challenge. So a challenge is, I'd like you to create the bottom blue flame for your flamethrower. As you can see, I just duplicated the main flame and I changed some value and pause the video now and give it back. How did that go for you, flamethrower? So instead of using the default sprite material, I like to create material instance from this single texture master. So click create material instance. I'm going to name this mi underscore flamethrower amber for this flame. Welcome back. How did that go for you? Hopefully you have your blue flame ready. And now I'm going to add some embers for this flame thrower. So instead of using the default sprite material, I like to create my own material for it. So go back to my material folder and I'm going to create a material instance from this single texture master. So click create material instance. I'm going to name this mi underscore flamethrower amber underscore additive. And I'm going to move it to my sub UV animation folder and open this material instance. I'm going to swap out this texture. So the texture I'm going for would be from this realistic VFX texture. And inside of it, you can see there's this texture. It's called T underscore spark underscore B. And I think the pattern of it is perfect for the things I want. So I'm going to swap it out. And this is what I get. Now, go back to my frame thrower. I'm first going to rename, and this is what I get. Now, go back to my frame thrower. I'm first going to rename this emitter to blue flame. And I'm going to create a new emitter after this smoke emitter. So right mouse button click, we can directly add an emitter inside of the Niagara system. And the template that I'm going to be using is this simple sprite burst. All right, I'm going to first isolate it so that we can see better. So first, I'm going to swap out this material. And go back to my content browser. Go back to this sub-UV animation, select this material instance. I'm going to fill it in. You can see this is what we have so far. First thing that I'm going to set this loop behavior to be infinite, and I'm going to use spawn rate. And the value for it doesn't need to be very high. So I think a value between 20 and 30 will be enough. Now it's this initialized particle. So I'm going to give it a random lifetime. Somewhere between 1 and 2. Let's price size mode. I'm going to choose this random uniform. And I think 10 and 20 will be reasonable. In here, feel free to use your own values. And I'm also going to set its initial color. So I'm going to go for something yellowish or something orangish and increase its value quite a bit. Maybe try 10. Or 5. And click OK. Now we only have this one single ember in our world origin. So I'm going to first use a shape location. And the shape primitive, I'm going to use box and plane. And I'm going to click play in here. All right, something like this. I'm going to pan my viewport a little bit and go back to my initialized particle. I'm going to set its rotation to be random. And keep using the module at velocity. Set it to be in cone. The speed of it, I'm going to use a random value between 200 and 300. Now you can see we have some flying embers. So I'm gonna disable emitter isolation, see what it looks like with the other emitters we have. So currently the size of the box is too huge. I'm gonna increase the size of my viewport window a little bit. So I'm gonna decrease the size of it. Go back to my shape location. I'm gonna decrease its value for the z-axis. So maybe a value of 70 would be better. We can also come back to tweak the values later. And inside of the particle update, first I'm going to add the module scale sprite size. And use this curve instead. Alright, I'm going to go back to my level and see what it looks like. Alright, we're getting somewhere. And next thing, I'd like to adjust its spawn location. So go back to my Niagara system. To do that, we can go inside of this initialized particle and set its position offset in there. So I'm going to offset it for 100 units in the x-axis and something like that. I think I need to increase its lifetime a little bit, so go back to my Niagara system. And for its lifetime, I'm going to go with the value between 2 and 2.5. And just to provide it with more randomness in its movement, I'm going to use the module curl noise force. And for the strength of the noise, I'm going to increase it to 80. And for the frequency of the noise, I'm going to decrease it to 10. Now go back to my level. Yeah. I think this looks much better. And just to add in a little more details, I'm going to use the module drag. So the embers will hang for a little bit. Yeah, I think this already looks decent enough. And one last thing that I like to add. So while these embers are floating in the air, I want to alter their brightness a little bit. So in real life, the brightness of the embers should change during their lifetime. And there are multiple ways for us to do that. So if we want to do it inside of Niagara system, so inside of this scale color, we can change the curve for its alpha. So it can reach to 0 at some point and go back to 1 at some point, or we can do that inside of our material. Go back to my content browser. I'm going to add some nodes to my master material. So go back to my material folder, double click to open this single texture master. So the node I'm going to use is called sign remapped. So just to quickly show you what this node can do, I'm going to change the preview mode to a plane and right mouse button click this node, start previewing it. So for the sign phase, I'm going to pass in the node time and plug it in. And you can see after that, the color of my surface begins to change. So this node allows us to output a value. And by doing that, reviewing this node will be something that we can directly the default value of 0.5 max and plug this by this RGB and color. And now you can see we can get this flashy effect. And there's one more node that I like to add. So not every one of the material instance will need this effect. So I want to enable it. So now and give it a adjust. I'm going to click this node. Now I'm going to use is called sign remapped. So just to quickly show you what this node can do, I'm going to change the preview mode to a plane and right mouse button click this node, start previewing it. So for the side face, I'm going to pass in the node time and plug it in, and you can see after that, the color of my surface begins to change. So this node allows us to output a value between value 1 and value 2. And we can multiply our emissive color with this output. And by doing that, we can achieve the flashy amber we want. So for the first value, I'm going to start previewing this node. I'm going to hold down S on my keyboard to bring out a scalar parameter. So later, this will be something that we can type keyboard to bring out a scalar parameter. So later, this will be something that we can directly adjust in material instance. I'm going to call this brightness min and give it a default value of 0.5. And I'm going to duplicate this parameter. I'm going to change its name to brightness max and give it a default value of 5. And plug this into value 1, plug this into value 2. And I'm going to use a multiply node to combine these two values. So plug the value of this pin into socket B and plug this into socket A. Now plug the final output into emissive color. And now you can see we can get this flashy effect. And there's one more node that I like to add. So now every one of the material instance flash is a multiply. I'm going to do later, and we can multiply our allows us to output a value. This our first value. I'm gonna so let's do and give it into this B and plug. And now you can see we can get this flashy. Now plug the final output into emissive color. And now you can see we can get this flashy effect. And there's one more node that I like to add. So now every one of the material instance will need this effect. So I want to enable it per material instance. And to do that, I'm going to use a switch parameter. If you are from my material course, hopefully you are finding all of this familiar. Parameter. If you are from my material course, and to do that, I'm going to use a switch parameter. If you are from my material tutorial course, hopefully you are finding all of this familiar. So basically, this now allows you to select true or false in material instance, and if it's true, the value of this pin will go through to the final output. If it's false, the value here will go through to the final output. So I'm going to change its name to should change brightness. And when it's true, this will go through, and when it's false, a value of 1 will go through to the final output. So by multiplying 1, this wouldn't really change anything to the final output. And plug this into socket A. And I'm going to organize these nodes a little bit and click apply. Now go A. And I'm going to organize these nodes a little bit and click apply. Now go back to my material instance, double click to open this and flamethrower. Now you can see we get this switch parameter, and after I take it and apply. Now you can see we get this switch parameter, and after I tick it, I have 2 more parameters that I can adjust. And if you click to it and click apply. Now go back to my material instance, double click to open this and flamethrower. Now you can see we get this switch parameter, and after I tick it, I have 2 more parameters that I can adjust. And if we look closely at our embers, you can see their brightness start to change. So I'm going to be a little extreme in here. So the brightness min, I'm going to change it to 0.1. The brightness max, I'm going to change it to 6. And now we have exactly the effect that we want. Looks pretty cool. And if we look closely at our embers, you can see their brightness start to change. So I'm going to be a little, if we look closely at ticket, I have two more parameters that I can adjust. And if we look closely at our embers, you can see their brightness start to change. So I'm going to be a little extreme in here. So the brightness mean, I'm going to change it to 0.1. The brightness max, I'm going to change it to 6. And now we have exactly the effect that we want. 6. And now we have exactly the effect that we want. Looks pretty cool. So these are the things that I did for creating the amber effect. So there are some things from Niagara emitter and there are some things from Material. So feel free to take a reference of the modules that I use inside of my Niagara emitter. And if you are not, you just still want more explanation, or you are still having trouble in understanding how these different nodes work, feel free to to leave a question in the Q&A section or in the Discord channel about it. I'll be happily providing